Good morning. This is Father Charles Everson, the Director of Communications with the Society of Catholic Priests, and we continue with our series of interviews with the Reverend Norman Whitmire. Whitmire?
Yes.
Wave to the camera.
Hello.
Father, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you serve?
So I am, I've been a priest for going on 7 years. Yeah, going on 7 years. I serve as the rector of All Saints Church in Woodhaven, which is a neighborhood of Queens here in New York City.
All right. And I learned something interesting about you this morning, that you used to be a medical doctor. Tell us about
Yes.
Tell us about your journey from the medical profession into the priesthood.
Into the priesthood. Oddly enough, I'll start by saying the two actually intersect, because my journey in the priesthood began, the initial kernels of it began when I was a medical student in New Haven, Connecticut, and began worshiping at Christ Church, New Haven. So I spent a total of 5 years in New Haven in medical school, and during that time both my faith journey deepened, and my life in the church got more and more extensive. And so by the time I finished medical school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. The wheels had started turning already. But I finished medical school and went on to residency, which I did in Philadelphia, and became an internist, internal medicine, practiced general internal medicine. Following my residency of 3 years, I practiced general internal medicine in the Washington, D.C. area, Alexandria, Virginia, for a total of 9.5 years. And it was during that time that I sort of started asking formal questions about a call to the priesthood, possibly, and began the discernment process with conversations with my priest, and so after the ups and downs of the discernment process, after 9.5 years, I finally left the medical practice and began seminary.
How long have you been a member of the society?
I have been a member of the society probably for about as long as I've been, for about the last 10 years, because I was at VTS for seminary, and the Mid-Atlantic chapter, it was in the early days of the SCP, actually. It was just forming, and a number of the people who were sort of on the ground floor of forming the United States chapter were in the DC area. And so I got involved, and they invited seminarians to be provisional members. So I was one of the earliest provisional members through the Mid-Atlantic chapter. So I've been a member ever since I was in seminary.
So in terms of this conference, tell us a thing or two about what you've liked the most, or that you've learned throughout the conference.
Well, the thing I've liked the most is the fact that it's in New York City, and I can just hop on the subway or a bus, and I'm here in within an hour for $2.75. So it's very nice being here, and I really appreciate that we're doing it here this year. A couple of things that I've really appreciated about the conference itself was, of course, the collegiality, and seeing a lot of my friends and colleagues that I've met over the years, or friends from seminary that I hadn't seen in a long time. So reconnecting has been wonderful. The talks, the sessions have just been fabulous, and really gives a lot of food for thought for some issues that I think we all care about. And as we see various perspectives in the wider church, it's nice, it's refreshing to see to see so much thought that's gone into the topics.
So dig a little deeper.
Dig a little deeper.
Yeah, pick one, or a particular one.
Particularly the issues around baptism and what that means, and some of the because those topics come up in conversation, particularly when clergy get together, and things like the conversations in General Convention, and to have more resources to draw on for a particular position, especially when those of us who fall on the side of baptism as the initiatory step and the required step into the sacramental life of the church, and so that's very important. I'll tell you a funny story as an aside. Last night I came home and my mother lives here, and my mother is an unapologetic Baptist, which is what we grew up. And even though she comes to Mass with me, comes to Mass on most Sundays, she is very clear that she's not an Episcopalian. She doesn't want to be an Episcopalian. She likes the Masses, but she's going to stay a Baptist. And I told her about some of the questions that had been raised, and I mentioned that one of the things we talk about is the issue of communion without baptism and what that means. And without skipping a beat, she's like, you gotta have some rules. You can't just you gotta have some rules and with this, and people shouldn't expect to just come and have everything. You gotta learn what it's all about and before you can be allowed to have all of the perks of being a member. So she's she knows nothing about the tradition, canons, and all that. So the other thing that I really appreciate about this conference is the hope that I see in the church, because seeing so many young clergy in the church here, just seeing the present and the future of our church for a long time. I'm sort of in the middle, in terms of age, and so I'll be around for a while, God willing. But I also know that when I retire and when I'm gone, there's still going to be people that I'm talking to today that are still going to be here and carrying on the traditions of the church, and so that's really refreshing and reassuring.
In your own words, what does it mean for you to be an Anglo-Catholic?
Ooh, that is. I'm gonna have to think about that. Not because I don't know, but because there's so many ways to answer that. So many answers to that.
Just give it a stab.
I became an Anglican. I am an Anglo-Catholic because in my own spiritual journey, I rediscovered God in the ancient traditions of the church. I grew up Baptist, and love the tradition I grew up in. I love the music, but I also found that the disconnect from the historical church didn't resonate with me. I found myself drawn more and more into initially into the both the history and the connection to ancient Christianity, but also some of the ceremonial tradition was what sort of got me in. But the more I studied, the more I learned about what the traditions were all about and the why. I think the why is so important. It's not just the what. It's not just ringing a bell at the right time and saying these words and doing gestures and wearing pretty vestments. It's the why, and what fascinates me, and I think what captures me, and what I think is at the heart of what we do is understanding and teaching the why, because it all matters and it all reinforces our belief in God through Jesus Christ, how the triune God moves in our lives and in the lives of the world and this universe. And that's all reinforced in the way we express our faith. And I find that the Anglo-Catholic tradition helps to give tangible witness to who God is for us and for the world, and with all five senses, and that's at the core of what I appreciate about Anglo-Catholicism. But I also resonate with some of the fundamental teachings of the early Anglo-Catholics, or early framers of this movement, who went into the poorest areas of England and other places, and were trying to bring the beauty of God and His fullness and holiness to people who might not otherwise have access to that. And so all of this stuff that we do, if that's not also translating and making this world a better place, and serving the poor and feeding the hungry, clothing naked, giving water to the thirsty, and all the other things that actually our communities need, then why are we doing all this? So that's part of it.
Last question for you. If a seminarian or another clergy person were to ask you, why should I become a member of the Society of Catholic Priests, how would you respond?
You just should. No, I think the collegiality piece is probably the most important piece for me, that I've just being able to interact and talk to colleagues. Especially when you get into a parish ministry and all of the day-to-day details of that, you really can become isolated and not really have a chance to interact with colleagues. And you might have the benefit of a deanery, of a clericus in your local area, but the Society of Catholic Priests really brings together colleagues from all over a particular region, or for the national conference from all over the U.S. and Canada, and maybe even beyond. And so we get to share our stories, and we get to share our experiences, and we get to support each other. And there have been so many moments just in these past few days where I've shared something in my context, or a colleague has shared something about their context, and we realize that there's this connection, and you realize that we're not alone, that we're all doing God's work, and we all share similar experiences in many ways, and just to be able to talk about that has been very, very rich for me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Father.
Thank you.